Joshua Buatsi has agreed to face Willy Hutchinson in a battle of British light heavyweight rivals. Joshua Buatsi set to face Willy Hutchinson for the WBO interim light heavyweight title. The Londoner returns after a points win over Dan Aziz in February, while Hutchinson defeated Craig Richards by unanimous decision this month. Well, that was actually in June, so that's what this article is from, June, but I thought to read this article because this is the one I found that was nice and concise and short. Joshua Buatsi has agreed to a British battle against Willy Hutchinson, with the winner staying on course for a world light heavyweight title fight. Buatsi has been ordered to fight Hutchinson for the WBO interim belt and could emerge as a leading challenger ahead of the rescheduled undisputed world title fight between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. A purse bid had been called to establish terms for Buatsi versus Hutchinson, but the WBO has announced that a deal has now been reached with a date and venue to be confirmed. Well, the date and venue is confirmed because it's on the undercard of Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dynamite Dubois on the 21st of September. Hutchinson pulled off a career-best victory earlier this month, defeating Craig Richards on points in Saudi Arabia. Buatsi has been unable to finalise a long-awaited fight against Anthony Yarde, but will now switch his attention to a crucial clash against the Scottish contender, who has 18 victories and just one career defeat. In his last fight, Buatsi sealed a thrilling points victory over Dan Aziz in February, which extended his unbeaten record to 18 victories. An injury to Beterbiev prevented him from defending his WBC, WBO and IBF titles against WBA champion Dmitry Bivol on June the 1st. Now, I was wondering what was going to happen with Joshua Buatsi going forward after that Dan Aziz fight, because I believe that from his turn pro, he has basically gone backwards in his progress. I'm believing that he stunted his growth. Joshua Buatsi, born in Ghana, family moved to the UK when he was young. He resides in South London near the Croydon area, and he represented the UK at the 2016 Rio Olympics, collecting the bronze medal. Subsequently turning pro 2017 with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. Eddie Hearn does like to go and find amateur prospects that have medaled at the Olympics and take them on a journey to the title with his style of promotion, which is basically having them fight on undercards of bigger fights that are staged in and around the UK, all over the UK. He done it with Anthony Joshua, he done it with a few other fighters, and he tried to do it with Joshua Buatsi. Eddie Hearn got him up to a fight with Craig Richards. Now, before this, over there on BT Sports and Queensberry, Frank Warren has a fighter who's going through some sort of contractual situation with him at the moment, called Anthony Yarde, also light heavyweight. Had very few amateur fights, turned pro, and when he turned pro, he basically was heading, it was like Anthony Yarde is on Queensberry, Joshua Buatsi is on Matchroom, both light heavyweights, both pro and going up at the levels at the same type of time. This is a fight that should happen to kind of like see who the best of Britain is. It didn't happen. Anthony Yarde subsequently went on to fight Kovalev in a very good fight. While Kovalev was a champion, I think he was a WBO champion at the time. He went on to fight Kovalev and subsequently lost. In the 11th round, he got knocked out with a stiff jab, but he was very tired after exhausted himself out in the earlier rounds. And he almost stopped Kovalev at one point in the 10th round. Or was it the 9th round? One of these rounds, he almost stopped Kovalev. Didn't happen. Kovalev switched it round, ended up stopping him. But then, we can always say Anthony Yarde got this title fight. And even after that, Anthony Yarde even went and got a title fight against Artur Beterbiev. He could have also become a unified champion if he had beat Artur Beterbiev. Ultimately, Artur Beterbiev was just a bit too much for him and stopped him in the middle round somewhere. It was a decent fight, a decent, entertaining fight. but we can give credit to Anthony Yarde for actually having these title fights. He got himself into the position in a fast track way. I don't believe he had the necessary fights to get him them title fights, but he had the title fights, had a good account of himself, and even though he lost, he still made a name for himself in defeat because it was gallant defeats. It was gallant efforts. These times, Joshua Buatsi still can't get himself a title fight. When he did get the chance to fight Dimitri Bivol, it was at a point where he was supposed to be renewing his contract with Matchroom, and Matchroom was also moving from Sky to DAZN. And his trainer, Virgil Hunter, said that they would want about 2 more fights before they get to fight Dimitri Bivol. Eddie Hearn was having none of it. He's like, you need to have this fight now. You've had all the necessary fights. You're in the position to fight for the WBA title. You're WBA number 1 at the time. It was WBA number 1. Fight for the title. And win, lose or draw, you fought for the title. You're going to get paid well for it. Apparently, the amount being touted around was like £1 million, which is obviously a lot more than he'd ever earned before. But he says...
Can you imagine, fight for £1 million, yes or no, and that's it? Of course I would have said yes, but that wasn't it. There's so much caveats that came with it. Extensions, X amount of fights, which would have equated to spending another 2 to 3 years on DAZN. And if I wasn't happy at that channel, why would I agree to it?
Big man. If it wasn't for this promoter picking you up, who would have picked you up, bro? You don't know. You got picked up by basically the biggest promotional company in the UK. And now when the contract is coming to be renewed now, you're talking about, stipulations. Like the stipulation he was saying is if you fight Bivol, then you're going to have another 2, 3, or another 3, 4 fights with Matchroom under their contract. It's a renewal of a contract. This is what happens. When a promoter signs a fighter, they are under contract for a certain amount of years or a certain amount of fights, whichever way you look at it. If it's 5 fights, then you're under 5-fight contract. If that 5 fights happens within 2.5 years, that's how it goes. You're under this contract. He was saying that I don't want to be under this stipulate or whatever. I was like, you're being ridiculous, bro. These guys get too big for their boots and they haven't done anything. I don't know what he thought he was supposed to get or what he was entitled to. Then he tried to say,
what is the biggest sporting platform in the country?
Sky Sports.
Okay. Yeah.
What you're talking about is obviously the numbers, the eyeballs that are watching the fight. And there was a very small audience that watched it because it's a new platform. It's an app. It's a new platform on DAZN.
I think I can't necessarily say, I've got the figures and these were the numbers that watched it. But I just know that I have to ask myself, logically, was it on the biggest platform in England? The question is no. And for me, that's enough.
DAZN is a small platform and it's an app and I don't want to be on an app and blah blah blah, so I chose to go to Sky because it's going to get more eyes. And that's really backfired because Sky are trying to actually keep themselves in boxing at the moment, and DAZN is going from strength to strength to strength. So if he had stayed with DAZN, had that fight with Beterbiev, he may have projected his career even better and get even more prizes and better paid to this point where he is at now. But anyway, forget that. He went with Boxer and Ben Shalom, which is fine. Had some run-of-the-mill fights. Then he had this fight with Dan Aziz, which, to be fair to you, I rate Dan Aziz as a guy who's got it from the mud. He come up the hard way and he's a very much a throwback to the good old days, but he's not that good. He's just not that good. And if you're fighting Dan Aziz, you're supposed to beat Dan Aziz very emphatically. When you fought Craig Richards before you moved from DAZN to Sky and you fought Craig Richards, I don't actually think you won that fight. It was very close. It could have gone either way. You can't really call robbery, even though you can in a sense. I just don't think you won that fight. I think Craig won the fight, but Craig didn't put his foot on the pedal enough to certify that. And you were the guy that they were trying to push at the time. So I understand why you kind of got the fight. But Dan Aziz, you're supposed to stop Dan Aziz. And you didn't. You didn't beat Dan Aziz emphatically enough, in my opinion. So, in my opinion, I don't think you believed that you were ready for the Bivol fight. And so, when it got presented to you by Matchroom, you said, no, I don't want to do that. I want an easier route because I need more time. And you could have said that. If you had said that, instead of saying all this rubbish about the DAZN's app and you don't want people to have to go on the app to try and watch you. Bro, all you had to say was, I weren't ready for them fights that he was offering me. So I chose to go a different route, and that's why I'm now here on the Sky. If you had said that, I would have had respect for you. But what you said, I don't respect that attitude. But it's fine. You cracked on, and you've got yourself this fight. And it's only because the Sheikh has come in with this rehab season and come and put these things together why you're actually going to have this fight, in my opinion, against Willy Hutchinson. Willy Hutchinson now, Scottish national, he fought and beat David Morrell, who is at this moment trying to get a fight with Canelo, or basically I think he's gone up to light heavyweight now to try and get a fight with the champions. And obviously they're lining up because the champions have to have their undisputed fight before anyone else can fight them. But David Morrell has quickly become a high-risk, low-reward fighter who a lot of people have been avoiding, basically. You couldn't get a fight with David Benavidez, and he can't get this fight with Canelo that he's been trying to seek. So he's moved himself up to light heavyweight. So now they're all up there. So Willy Hutchinson, having had that win over David Morrell in the amateurs and subsequently also having won a European Junior gold medal representing Scotland, he has himself a good solid background in boxing. I never knew much about him until he fought Craig Richards. I saw him the fight before Craig Richards and the Craig Richards fight. And based on these two fights and his slick style of boxing, I'm actually going to give him the edge. He's younger by about 5 years. They've had the same amount of wins. They've had the same amount of knockouts. But Willy Hutchinson has fought less rounds because he's obviously knocked out man quicker than Joshua Buatsi has knocked out man. And that's where we are. Willy Hutchinson has had 19 fights, 1 loss and 18 wins. And where they're kind of even in terms of their pro records, and what I've seen of both fighters, I'm actually going to give the edge to Willy Hutchinson in this fight. I think Willy Hutchinson was going to win by split decision victory. I believe it's going to go the distance. Split decision victory for Willy Hutchinson. I think Joshua Buatsi will put up a brave and gallant fight. He seems to be very up for it. I think that Willy Hutchinson rattled his cage at the press conference to the point where backstage afterwards, they faced off again and Joshua Buatsi grabbed him at his throat area and they had to be pulled apart. Willy Hutchinson was trying to get at him. It was all getting messy backstage. But I believe that Willy Hutchinson has got under Joshua Buatsi's skin, which is, I think, is part of Willy Hutchinson's strategy to get Joshua Buatsi all worked up where he comes to try and get at him and knock him out. Because where Hutchinson is a slick type fighter, he wants the guy to come at him so he can make him miss and make him pay. Make him miss and make him pay. Punch within the punches and catch him with counters. I believe that's what's going to be the story of the night. I believe it's going to get to a point where Joshua Buatsi is going to be a bit more tentative with his output after trying hard at the beginning. And I believe that Willy Hutchinson is going to win by split decision victory. I believe that Buatsi is going to be the favourite, but I haven't seen the odds yet, but I think he will be the favourite. That's my prediction. I very much look forward to this fight. All this jostling and ramping around with the Anthony Yard fight, you could have had this fight ages ago, but you haven't. And now you think that you're going to get this fight and win this fight and go on to get a title fight, which is rightfully so if you win. That would be good for you to win and get your title fight, Joshua Buatsi. I just don't believe that Willy Hutchinson is a fighter that you're going to beat at this stage in his career and your career right now. Let's see how this stuff works out. We're going to do another video about this fight as it comes nearer to the date.